The morning sky over Seoul changed forever when the ships came down. They did not crash or slam into the earth like meteors. They floated down like feathers made of crystal and light. Each ship was the size of a football stadium, but looked weightless as it drifted through the clouds. Admiral Kang Minho stood in the command center 40 floors above the city streets. His hands gripped the metal rail as he watched 3 massive vessels settle over the Han River. The ships made no sound except for a soft humming that reminded him of his grandmother singing lullabies when he was small. Similar scenes played out across the world. London saw 2 ships land in Hyde Park. Tokyo watched 4 vessels hover over the Imperial Palace. New York had 5 ships floating above Central Park like giant soap bubbles that refused to pop. The ships were beautiful in a way that made people stop fighting and stare. Even the protesters in the streets put down their signs. Traffic stopped not because of panic, but because drivers got out of their cars to look up in wonder. Dr. Park Ji-woo was in her laboratory when the first broadcast came. Every screen in Seoul lit up at the same time. Every radio played the same message. The voice that spoke was soft and musical like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. We are the tranquil shepherds of the harmonic coalition. We come to your world with open hands and peaceful hearts. We have traveled far to bring you a gift greater than gold or jewels. We offer you serenity. The message repeated in perfect Korean, then switched to English, then Mandarin, then Spanish. The voice never changed its gentle tone. It spoke each language as if it had been born speaking those words. President Lee Hyman was in an emergency meeting when the aliens made their first appearance. The conference room filled with soft golden light, and 3 figures materialized like morning mist taking shape. They looked almost human, but seemed to be made of starlight and music. Their skin glowed with a warm inner radiance. When they moved, it was like watching dancers who had never learned what it meant to stumble or fall. "Do not fear us," said the tallest figure. Its voice came from everywhere and nowhere like an echo in a cathedral. "We are here because we have seen your pain. We have watched your wars and your suffering. We have come to heal what is broken in your species." The alien gestured and the air filled with images. Cities where no one fought. Planets where war was just an old word in forgotten books. Beings of 1,000 different species living together in perfect harmony. "We have brought peace to 537 worlds," said the alien. "Each species we have touched has found happiness beyond their dreams. No more hunger, no more anger, no more fear. Only gentle contentment and eternal serenity." Captain Nam Tae-hyun was on patrol in the mountains when he got the emergency call. By the time he reached Seoul, the aliens had been on Earth for 6 hours. The city looked different already. People moved slower on the streets. Their faces had a dreamy quality, like they had just woken from the most wonderful sleep. The aliens had set up what they called Serenity Centers in every major city. These were domes of the same crystal material as their ships. Inside the domes, a soft blue light pulsed like a heartbeat. Anyone who entered came out, changed. Taehyun watched a group of protesters march toward the Blue House. They carried signs demanding the aliens leave Earth alone. But as they passed near one of the Serenity Centers, their angry chants became quieter. Their signs dropped to their sides. By the time they reached the government building, they were simply standing in a peaceful group talking softly about how nice the weather was. Dr. Park Ji-woo was among the first scientists allowed to meet the aliens face to face. She entered their ship through an opening that appeared in the crystal hull like a door made of liquid light. Inside, everything was curves and gentle slopes. There were no sharp edges or harsh angles. The walls sang with soft harmonies that made her feel like she was floating in warm honey. The aliens welcomed her with what might have been smiles if they had faces that worked like human faces. They showed her wonders beyond imagination. Machines that could heal any disease, devices that could clean the oceans in a day, technology that could end hunger and poverty forever. "All we ask in return," said their leader, "is that you trust us. Let us help you become what you were meant to be. Let us free you from the burden of aggression and competition. Let us teach you the joy of perfect peace." They showed her recordings from other worlds. species that had once been violent and chaotic like humans. Now they lived in beautiful cities where no one ever argued or fought. Everyone had everything they needed. Everyone was perfectly content. But as Jiwoo watched the recording, she noticed something strange. The beings in these perfect cities moved slowly. They rarely smiled. They seemed to drift through their days like sleepwalkers in paradise. When she asked about this, the aliens looked confused. They explained that those beings had achieved the highest state of existence. They no longer needed the primitive emotions that caused suffering. They had found true peace. That evening, Jiwoo returned to her laboratory with a head full of questions. She ran tests on volunteers who had visited the Serenity Centers. Their brain scans showed unusual patterns in areas that controlled emotion and decision-making. Meanwhile, across the city, Admiral Minho received reports from military bases around the world. Soldiers near alien sites were laying down their weapons, not in surrender but because they no longer saw the point of carrying them. Fighting seemed like such an ugly old habit from a more primitive time. President Lee Hyman faced the hardest decision of her career. The aliens offered everything humanity had ever dreamed of: an end to war, an end to disease, an end to the environmental crisis. All Earth had to do was accept their help and join their peaceful galactic family. But Captain Tae-hyun could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. He had spent his life training to protect people. Now he watched those same people become calm and quiet and empty in a way that made his skin crawl. The aliens were not invaders. They were not conquerors. They were teachers who wanted to help humanity grow up. But as the first day of alien contact ended, Tae-hyun wondered if growing up the alien way meant becoming something that was no longer human. The crystal ships hummed their lullabies over sleeping cities. Inside the Serenity Centers, the blue lights pulsed. And across the world, people began to dream of a future where no one would ever hurt or struggle or fight again. Some called it salvation. Others wondered if it might be the gentlest extinction ever devised. 3 months had passed since the crystal ships first touched Earth. The world looked peaceful now. Crime rates had dropped to almost nothing. Wars had ended not with treaties but with soldiers on both sides simply walking away from their weapons. Stock markets barely moved because no one wanted to compete anymore. Dr. Park Ji-woo sat in her laboratory staring at brain scans that made her stomach turn cold. She had been studying people who visited the Serenity Centers regularly. The results showed changes that should have been impossible. The human brain had areas that controlled anger and fear and ambition. In normal people, these areas glowed bright on the scans like tiny fires burning in the mind. But in people who spent time with the aliens, these fires were going out one by one. Her assistant Kim Dae-ho had been one of the first volunteers to visit a Serenity Center. Before his visit, he had been working on a cure for cancer. He stayed in his lab for 16 hours a day, driven by the dream of saving lives. Now he came to work exactly 8 hours, and spent most of that time staring peacefully out the window. When Jiwoo asked him about his research, he smiled the same empty smile everyone wore these days. He said he no longer felt the need to rush. Cancer would be cured when it was meant to be cured. Why cause himself stress over something so small? The worst part was that Dae-ho seemed genuinely happy. He slept well. He never argued with anyone. He had no worries or fears. But the man who had once burned with passion to heal the sick was gone forever. Meanwhile, on Mars colony, engineer Cho Sun-woo watched Earth through powerful telescopes and felt her heart break. The Red Planet was one of the few places the aliens had not visited yet. They said they wanted to finish helping Earth before moving to the smaller human settlements. Sun-woo and her team had been monitoring alien communications since day one. The signals were not encrypted because beings who lived in perfect harmony had no secrets to hide. What they found in those messages changed everything. The aliens spoke of Earth the way farmers might discuss livestock. They mentioned the neural adjustments needed to bring human aggression levels down to acceptable ranges. They calculated how long it would take to eliminate the competitive instincts that made humans so inefficient. Most disturbing were the files about other species the aliens had helped. The records went back thousands of years. Race after race had been brought into the harmonic coalition. Each species had their warrior instincts removed, their competitive drives eliminated, their chaotic creativity smoothed away. The aliens kept detailed statistics, productivity levels on converted worlds, resource extraction rates, population stability indexes. Every world that joined the coalition became a perfect supplier of whatever the galactic empire needed. But there was something else hidden in the deepest files. Sun Wu found records of species that had refused the aliens' help. These races were listed as extinct, not destroyed by war but simply noted as having died out from their own violence and chaos. She realized with growing horror that the aliens genuinely believed they were saving everyone. To them, humans who fought and competed and dreamed impossible dreams were sick creatures who needed to be healed. They could not understand that the very things they wanted to cure were what made life worth living. Captain Nam Tai-hyun had been investigating the Serenity Centers for weeks. What he found made him want to scream, but there was no one left to scream to. His fellow soldiers had all been pacified. His commanders spent their days in meditation instead of planning missions. He discovered that the blue light inside the centers was not just light. It carried microscopic machines smaller than viruses. These machines crossed into the brain through the eyes and began rewiring neural pathways. The process was gentle and painless and completely irreversible. The worst part was that people begged to go back to the centers. The machines created an addiction to serenity. Humans who had tasted perfect peace could not bear the messy complications of normal emotions. They returned again and again until there was nothing left of who they used to be. Tae-hyun tried to warn people, but they just smiled and patted his shoulder. They told him he would understand once he let the aliens help him too. His anger and fear were just symptoms of his sickness. The cure was waiting for him whenever he was ready to accept it. Admiral Kang Min-ho received a priority message from Mars Colony that made his blood freeze. Engineer Sun Wu had uncovered the truth about the Harmonic Coalition. They were not evil conquerors, but something far more dangerous. They were missionaries spreading a gospel of peace that killed the soul. The files from Mars painted a clear picture. Every species the aliens had helped became docile producers of resources. Their worlds were turned into vast gardens, where former warriors and artists and dreamers spent their days in quiet, contentment harvesting whatever the coalition needed. Earth had perhaps 3 months before the changes became permanent. For most of the population, already major cities were functioning like clockwork. Everyone went to work on time. Everyone followed the rules. Everyone was perfectly happy and completely dead inside. But the worst news was yet to come. Sun Wu had intercepted communication showing that other human colonies were next. The aliens planned to visit every world where humans lived. Mars Colony and the outer settlements would receive their gift of serenity, whether they wanted it or not. Dr. Yoon Mirai had been working in secret to understand the alien technology. She was one of the few scientists who had refused to visit the Serenity Centers. Her research focused on the microscopic machines that rewired human brains. She discovered that the machines could be temporarily blocked using specific electromagnetic frequencies. The treatment only lasted a few days, but it allowed people to think clearly for short periods. Unfortunately, most people who received the treatment begged her to stop. They said normal emotions were too painful after experiencing perfect peace. Mirai began reaching out to others who had resisted the alien influence. She found Admiral Min-ho and Captain Tae-hyun and a handful of others who still remembered what it felt like to be fully human. They met in secret locations, shielded from alien observation. The group was small and growing smaller every day as more members gave into the promise of eternal serenity. But they represented something the aliens had never encountered in 500 worlds of conquest. They represented humans who would rather suffer as themselves than live in peace as something else. President Lee. Hemin faced impossible pressure from all sides. World leaders who had once been strong and decisive now spoke in gentle whispers about accepting the alien gift. Her own cabinet had been visiting Serenity Centers and urged her to do the same. The aliens assured her that resistance was just another symptom of human sickness. Once she allowed them to help her, she would see how foolish her fears had been. Fighting was such an ugly habit. Competition caused such unnecessary pain. Why cling to primitive emotions when perfection was being offered freely? But deep in her heart, Hyemin remembered what it felt like to dream of being more than she was. She remembered the fire that had driven her to fight for justice and change the world. She wondered if a universe without that fire was worth living in at all. The resistance was born not from hatred of the aliens, but from love of humanity. They gathered in the shadows knowing they were fighting the kindest extinction ever devised. Their enemy offered them everything they thought they wanted and asked only that they stop being human in return. Time was running out and the crystal ships hummed their lullabies over a world that was forgetting how to dream. The resistance met in an abandoned subway tunnel beneath Seoul. The electromagnetic shielding that Dr. Yoon Mirai had installed kept alien sensors from detecting them. 23 humans sat in a circle surrounded by the ghosts of a world that used to fight and dream and rage against the dying of the light. Admiral Kang Min-ho looked around at the faces of the last free humans on Earth. There was Captain Nam Tae-hyun, whose eyes still burned with the fire of a warrior. Dr. Park Ji-woo sat beside Engineer Cho Sun-woo, who had traveled from Mars to join them. President Lee Hye-emin had risked everything to attend this meeting in secret. "We are losing," said Min-ho quietly. "Every day more people visit the Serenity Centers. Every day we become fewer. In 2 months there will be no one left who remembers what it means to be human." The group sat in silence. Above them, the city hummed with perfect efficiency. Traffic moved in orderly patterns. Crime had dropped to zero. Everyone was healthy and happy and slowly dying inside. Dr. Yi-woo had spent weeks studying the alien psychology. She discovered something that changed everything. The harmonic coalition had a blind spot so complete, it was almost impossible to believe. "They cannot understand beneficial conflict," she explained to the group. "To them, all fighting is primitive. All competition is wasteful. They have eliminated these concepts from their own minds so completely that they cannot see how struggle creates strength." She showed them recordings of alien discussions about human behavior. The aliens spoke of human wars as a mental illness. They talked about athletic competitions as a form of self-harm. They saw business rivalry and scientific debates as symptoms of a diseased mind. But Captain Taehyun had an idea that was so crazy, it might actually work. What if we showed them that our flaws are not flaws at all? What if we proved that the things they want to cure are actually what make us strong? The plan they developed was unlike anything attempted in human history. They would not fight the aliens with weapons because that would only prove the aliens right about human violence. Instead, they would demonstrate that humanity's greatest strength came not from peace but from the ability to create order from chaos. Engineer Cho Sun-woo worked with her team on Mars to design the most complex challenge ever conceived. They would create a global crisis that could only be solved by humans working at their chaotic best. Not the gentle cooperation the aliens promoted, but the fierce, desperate, brilliant teamwork that emerged when humans faced impossible odds. The plan required the participation of every free human on Earth and in the colonies. They had to coordinate a demonstration that would show the aliens what they had never seen in 500 worlds of conquest. They had to show beings who had forgotten struggle what it looked like when struggle created miracles. Dr. Yoon Mirai began preparing the resistance for what would be the performance of their lives. They would have to trigger disasters that looked real enough to fool alien observers, but were actually carefully controlled events. The timing had to be perfect or real people would die. President Lee Hye-emin faced the hardest part of the plan. She had to convince world leaders who had been partially pacified to participate in what would look like global suicide. Many of them could barely remember why conflict might ever be necessary. The idea of deliberately creating chaos terrified their altered minds. But deep in the places the aliens had not yet reached, some spark of humanity still flickered. When Hye-emin spoke of children who would never know the joy of earning victory through struggle, something woke up in the eyes of leaders around the world. The aliens noticed the increased activity among the resistance, but interpreted it as the final desperate thrashing of a dying ideology. Their leader spoke to the United Nations about the last stages of species conversion. Soon even the most stubborn humans would accept the gift of serenity. "We have seen this before on 400 worlds," said the alien ambassador. "The final group always fights hardest just before surrender. Do not worry. Their pain will end soon, and they will thank us for our patience." Admiral Min-ho coordinated with military leaders who still retained some independence of thought. They had to prepare for the most complex operation in human history, while appearing to surrender to alien wisdom. Equipment had to be positioned. Personnel had to be briefed. Backup plans needed backup plans. The aliens had no concept of deception because perfect beings had no need for lies. This gave the resistance their only advantage. The aliens saw their preparations but interpreted them as humans, finally organizing their chaotic society into something resembling proper order. Captain Taehyun led teams across the globe who practiced Their roles in the coming demonstration. They had to learn to create disasters that looked real but could be controlled. They had to master the art of appearing to struggle, while actually executing carefully planned operations. The hardest part was explaining the plan to resistance members, who had been partially affected by alien influence. These humans could still think independently, but they found the idea of deliberately creating conflict almost physically painful. Their altered brains recoiled from anything that resembled the old chaotic ways. Dr. Park Ji-woo worked on the scientific component of the demonstration. They needed to show the aliens that human chaos was not random destruction, but a form of creative force that could solve problems no peaceful species had ever imagined. The mathematics alone required thinking patterns the aliens had eliminated from their own minds thousands of years ago. Engineer Sun-woo prepared the technological surprises that would be needed to make the demonstration work. Human technology was primitive compared to alien science, but it had something alien tech lacked. It was built by beings who expected things to break and planned for catastrophic failures. The aliens had technology that never failed because they had eliminated the concept of beneficial failure from their thinking. They could not imagine that breaking something might be the first step to building something better. Their perfect machines were also perfectly predictable. 2 weeks before the demonstration was set to begin, the aliens announced their final phase. They would expand the Serenity Centers to cover entire continents. Every human on Earth would receive the gift whether they wanted it or not. The age of human conflict was about to end forever. The Resistance knew this was their last chance. In 14 days, they would either prove that humanity deserved to remain human or they would become the final species to join the galactic empire of perfect peaceful beings who had forgotten how to truly live. As the countdown began, the crystal ships hummed their lullabies over cities full of people who no longer dreamed of being heroes. But in the shadows, the last dreamers prepared to show the universe what happened when humans refused to go gentle into that good night. The aliens expected humanity to rage against them and prove their point about primitive violence. Instead, humanity was about to demonstrate something the galaxy had forgotten existed. They were going to show what strength looked like when it came not from weapons but from the unbreakable human spirit that turned every defeat into victory and every ending into a new beginning. The demonstration begins. Engineer Cho Sun-woo and her Mars team create a cascading system failure that threatens Earth's entire infrastructure. To outside observers, it looks like humanity is destroying itself. Exactly what the aliens expected. But Dr. Yoon Mirai has prepared the resistance for this moment. Instead of the panic and violence the aliens anticipate, they witness something unprecedented in their galactic experience. Humans turning their greatest weaknesses into strengths. Cities organize themselves without central authority. Strangers compete to help each other. Artists create beauty from destruction. Scientists make breakthrough discoveries under impossible pressure. President Lee Jae-min leads by example, working alongside ordinary citizens rather than commanding from safety. The aliens watch in bewilderment as humanity demonstrates that their chaos isn't a flaw. It's an evolutionary advantage. Where other species would crumble or require alien intervention, humans thrive. They don't just solve problems. They emerge stronger from every crisis. Captain Nam Tae-hyun leads rescue operations that become impromptu innovation labs. People who've never met before form unbreakable teams. Children adapt to the crisis faster than adults. The elderly share wisdom that saves lives. The harmonic coalition begins to experience something they haven't felt in millennia: doubt. As humanity's demonstration reaches its climax, the aliens make a stunning discovery. Every major advancement in their own civilization, the technology they use, the peaceful methods they employ, the very concept of galactic harmony originally came from species like humanity. Dr. Park Ji-woo reveals research showing that the coalition's own historical records contain traces of innovation that could only have come from chaotic species. The aliens have been so successful at creating serenity that they've forgotten their own origins. The tranquil shepherds face an existential crisis. Admiral Kang Min-ho broadcasts a message to the entire galactic community. You didn't come to save us. You came to save yourselves from the sterility of perfection. Engineer Cho Sun-woo demonstrates that the aliens' technology has stagnated for thousands of years. Meanwhile, in just 6 months of crisis, Humanity has made leaps that would have taken the Coalition centuries, if they could make them at all. The most shocking revelation comes from Dr. Yoon Mirai's research. Many of the elevated species in the galaxy are slowly dying out, not from war or disease, but from a kind of spiritual entropy. Perfect beings, it turns out, have no reason to continue existing. Some faction of the Harmonic Coalition begins to question their entire philosophy, while others double down, insisting that humanity's way leads only to suffering and destruction. The galaxy stands at a crossroads. The demonstration has worked too well. Some alien species are beginning to rebel against their own serenity, causing chaos throughout the Coalition. The shepherds face a choice: forcibly convert humanity to prevent galactic instability, or accept that their perfect system has a fatal flaw. President Lee Hyman addresses the Galactic Assembly with a proposal that no one saw coming. Humanity will join the Coalition, but as partners, not subjects. They'll serve as the galaxy's immune system, the chaos agents who prevent stagnation and push civilization forward through creative conflict. Captain Nam Tae-hyun leads the first joint human-alien mission, helping a sterile civilization rediscover innovation by reintroducing controlled competition. Dr. Park, Jiwoo establishes the first chaos centers, counterpoints, to the Serenity Centers where beings can experience calculated risk and meaningful struggle. Engineer Cho Sunwoo begins designing ships that carry both human and alien crews, vessels that embody the principle of productive discord. Dr. Yoon Mirai develops neural treatments that allow elevated species to gradually reclaim their lost edge without losing their newfound wisdom. The story concludes with Admiral Kang Minho standing on the bridge of humanity's first interstellar vessel, watching as human colonies spread throughout the galaxy, not as conquerors but as catalysts. Everywhere humans go, they bring the gift that the galaxy had forgotten it needed, the strength that comes from embracing imperfection. The final scene reveals that Earth has become the most visited world in the galaxy, not for its resources or technology, but because it's the only place where beings can experience what they've lost, the beautiful, terrible, magnificent chaos of truly being alive. The cosmos had sent Serenity Envoys to Earth, expecting to find another broken species to fix. Instead, they discovered that sometimes the greatest strength lies not in perfection, but in the courage to remain beautifully, defiantly, triumphantly human.